The shields flickered again, and Elder Chitin Sage felt his heart sink deeper into despair. 3 months had passed since the Kresh warships had arrived in orbit above their peaceful colony on Kepler 442b. 3 months of constant bombardment, dwindling supplies, and prayers that went unanswered across the vast emptiness of space. He stood in the communications center, his 6 legs trembling with exhaustion. Around him, other Velans worked frantically at their stations, their chitinous exoskeletons dull from stress and lack of proper nutrition. The Velans had never been warriors. They were miners, terraformers, and farmers. Their entire civilization had been built on the principle of harmony with nature and peaceful coexistence with all living beings. That philosophy had served them well for thousands of years, until the Kresh Dominion had discovered their little colony. Communications Officer Vespa turned to face him, her antennae drooping with defeat. "Elder, I have sent distress signals to every known civilization in this sector. The assembled councils have acknowledged our transmission but declined to intervene. The Morvani Empire says we are too far from their territory. The Silicon Collective calculates that protecting us offers no strategic advantage." Chitin Sage clicked his mandibles in frustration. "And the others?" "Silent, Elder, all of them silent." Another explosion rocked the facility. Dust fell from the ceiling as the shield generators whined with the strain of deflecting yet another plasma barrage. The Kresh were patient predators. They did not need to destroy the colony. They simply needed to wait until the shields failed and the Velans were too weak to resist. Then they would descend, place collars around every Velan neck, and drag them off to labor camps across the Dominion. Chitin Sage had heard the stories. Entire species enslaved, their cultures erased, their children raised to serve Kresh masters. He would die before he let that happen to his people, but death seemed the only option left. "Expand the broadcast range," he said quietly. "Send the distress signal on every frequency we can generate. Someone, somewhere, must have the courage to help." Vespa hesitated. "Elder, if we use that much power, we will drain the emergency reserves. The medical bay will lose life support within hours. Do it anyway. If no one comes, the medical bay will not matter." Vespa bowed her head and began adjusting the communications array. Within moments, the entire facility dimmed as massive amounts of power were diverted to the transmitter. The distress signal, containing their location, their situation, and their desperate plea for help, shot out into space in all directions, touching frequencies that most civilized species had abandoned centuries ago. Hours passed, then days. The Kresh continued their assault, seemingly amused by the Velan's determination to survive. Commander Thraka, the leader of the Kresh fleet, had even sent a mocking message offering terms of surrender. The Velans would be worked only 12 hours per day if they submitted peacefully. They would be fed adequate rations. Their children would not be separated from their parents for at least 5 years. Chitin Sage had not bothered to respond. On the 7th day after the expanded broadcast, Vespa suddenly straightened at her console, her antennae standing straight up in surprise. "Elder, we have received a response." Chitin Sage rushed to her station as fast as his exhausted legs could carry him. "Who? Which civilization?" Vespa's mandibles clicked in confusion as she studied the data. "I do not know, Elder. The signal identifies itself as coming from something called the Earth Expeditionary Force. I have searched our entire database. There is no record of any species or civilization called Earth. Play the message." The communications console crackled with static. Then a voice emerged. It was strange, neither too deep nor too high, with an odd rhythmic quality that the Velans had never heard before. The translation software struggled for a moment before rendering the words in Velan language. Message received. Earth Expeditionary Force en route to your position. Hold your position and maintain shields if possible. Estimated time of arrival, 47 hours. Repeat, help is coming. Hold on. The communications center fell silent. Every Velan stopped working and stared at the console as if it might suddenly explain this impossible development. "Earth?" Chitin Sage whispered. "Search every galactic database. I want to know who these beings are." The next hours were a flurry of research activity. The Velans discovered that Earth was a small planet, in an isolated spiral arm of the galaxy, far from any major trade routes or political centers. The dominant species there called themselves humans, and they had only achieved faster-than-light travel about a century ago. What they found in the limited records was deeply troubling. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, chasing their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their planet had been racked by countless wars, and they had nearly destroyed themselves with weapons of terrifying power. Even their own history records showed that they had committed atrocities against their own kind, dividing themselves by arbitrary characteristics and fighting over resources, beliefs, and territory. "Elder," Vespa said nervously, "are we certain we want these humans to come? They seem very violent." Chitin Sage looked at the shield readouts. They were down to 20% capacity. "We have no choice. If they do not come, we will all be slaves by tomorrow evening." But privately, Chitin Sage wondered if they were simply trading one monster for another. What did these humans want? Why would they travel across hostile space to help a species they had never met? Nothing in galactic politics suggested that anyone did anything without expecting something valuable in return. The Kresh intercepted the human transmission as well. Commander Thraka reviewed the message with his officers, and their reaction was loud, mocking laughter. "Humans?" Thraka growled, his scales rippling with amusement. "I have never heard of them." "Have any of you?" His intelligence officer checked the military databases. "Commander, Earth is a minor world in Sector 447. They have no significant military presence on record. No territorial disputes. No trade agreements. They are galactic nobodies. How many ships could such a worthless species possibly send? 2? 3? Unknown, Commander. But logic suggests they cannot field a significant force. They have no allies, no resources, no experience in galactic conflict." Thraka leaned back in his command chair, his tail swishing with satisfaction. "Then we will crush these foolish humans along with the Velans. It will be a valuable lesson to any other species that considers interfering with Kresh expansion. Increase bombardment intensity. I want those shields down before these humans arrive." Below, in the colony, Chitin Sage gathered his people in the central assembly hall. Hundreds of Velans looked up at him with desperate hope in their multifaceted eyes. "My friends," he began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber, "I will not lie to you. I do not know if the beings who answered our call are saviors or simply different predators. But they answered when no one else would. They are coming when the entire galaxy abandoned us. For that reason alone, I choose to hope." The Velans clicked their mandibles in agreement, the sound filling the hall like rain on metal. 47 hours, Chitin Sage continued. "We must survive for 47 more hours. Keep the shields active. Ration what remains, and pray to whatever forces govern this universe that we have not simply invited a different kind of doom." As the Velans dispersed to their duties, Chitin Sage returned to the communications center. He looked up through the transparent dome at the stars beyond, where Kresh warships circled like carrion birds. Somewhere out there, humans were coming. The question that haunted him was simple. Would they arrive as heroes or as something far worse? Commander Thraka stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endless Hunger, watching the countdown timer with cold satisfaction. 36 hours remained until these mysterious humans were supposed to arrive. The Velan shields would fail long before then. His claws tapped rhythmically against the armrest of his command throne as he studied the bombardment patterns on the tactical display. The shields protecting the colony were flickering more frequently now, their energy signature weakening with each passing hour. Victory was inevitable, as it always was when the Kresh Dominion set their sights on prey. The bridge doors hissed open, and his intelligence officer approached with the quick, nervous steps of someone bearing potentially unwelcome news. "Commander, I have completed the full database search on these humans you requested, and Earth is located in what most civilizations consider the galactic backwater. The planet itself is unremarkable. Standard gravity, oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, abundant water. The humans achieved faster-than-light capability approximately 80 years ago." Thraka snorted. 80 years? We have waste disposal units older than their space program. What kind of military could they possibly possess? That is the curious part, Commander. There are almost no records of human military activity in galactic space. No territorial conflicts, no trade disputes, no mercenary contracts. They appear to have remained completely isolated since achieving FTL travel. Isolated? Thraka's eyes narrowed. By choice or by rejection? Unknown, Commander. The few species that have encountered humans describe them as strange. They ask many questions but offer little about themselves. They trade rarely and refuse most diplomatic overtures. Thraka considered this. In his experience, species that isolated themselves did so for one of two reasons. They were either too weak to compete with galactic powers, or they were hiding something. Given that humans were traveling across hostile space to help strangers, weakness seemed unlikely. What of their biology? Their capabilities? The intelligence officer brought up a holographic display showing a human figure. Thraka studied it with growing confusion. The creature stood upright on only 2 legs, had no scales or natural armor, no claws worth mentioning, and appeared disturbingly fragile. They are carbon-based, warm-blooded, with internal skeletons. Their homeworld has high gravity by galactic standards, which has made them physically stronger than their appearance suggests. However, they lack natural weapons or defenses. Their skin is easily damaged. Then how have they survived as a species? Tool use, Commander. Advanced tool use. Humans apparently evolved as persistence hunters. They would chase prey for days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion, then kill it with weapons. Their biology allows them to run for extremely long periods without rest. Thraka laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the bridge. They are marathon runners, not warriors. How many ships are they sending to die for these worthless Velans? Unknown, Commander. However, given their limited galactic presence and recent spacefaring status, I estimate no more than 5 vessels, likely scout-class or light frigates. And we have 12 warships, including 3 heavy cruisers. Thraka's tail lashed with pleasure. This will be over quickly. When the humans arrive, destroy them immediately. Leave 1 ship crippled but intact. I want survivors to bring word back to Earth about what happens when primitive species interfere with the Kresh Dominion. Deep in the Velan colony, Elder Chitin Sage had made a disturbing discovery. One of his researchers had found an old data file from a trade consortium that had briefly dealt with humans 40 years ago. The file contained an observation that made his antenna twitch nervously. The humans, the file read, are unlike any species we have encountered. They form emotional attachments to beings outside their own kind. During negotiations, one of their diplomats stopped the proceedings to rescue a small mammal that had become trapped in the ventilation system. When asked why they would delay important business for a creature of no intelligence, the human seemed confused by the question. It was suffering, the human said, as if that explained everything. Chitin Sage read the passage 3 times. In his experience, species helped others for strategic gain, resource acquisition, or mutual defense pacts. The concept of helping simply because another being was suffering was alien to galactic politics. Either humans were naive fools who would soon be extinct, or they operated by principles that the galaxy had forgotten long ago. He did not have long to ponder this mystery. Vespa burst into his chamber, her antennae vibrating with excitement and terror. Elder, the humans have arrived. What? But they are not due for another 34 hours. They are here now, Elder. They have dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Chitin Sage rushed to the command center, his heart's pounding. On the main display, sensors showed the impossible. The human fleet consisted of 47 warships of various sizes. The largest vessels were massive, nearly twice the size of Kresh heavy cruisers. The smaller ones moved in tight formations around the larger ships like protective offspring. 47 ships, for a species that supposedly had no military presence in the galaxy. For strangers they had never met. For a colony that could offer them nothing in return. Aboard the Endless Hunger, chaos erupted on the bridge. Alarms blared as the sensor displays updated with the new contact information. Commander, the tactical officer shouted. I count 47 human vessels, frigate class to dreadnought class. They are forming a battle formation and advancing toward our position. Thraka stared at the display, his mind racing. This was wrong. This was all wrong. New spacefaring species did not possess this kind of military capability. They did not send fleets this large to protect aliens they had never met. Battle stations, he roared. All ships prepare for combat. We may be outnumbered, but we are Kresh. We have conquered 100 worlds and enslaved 50 species. These soft-skinned apes will learn the price of challenging us. The human fleet continued its advance, and then a message broadcast across all frequencies in perfectly translated Kresh language. Kresh Dominion Forces. This is Rear Admiral Chen of the Earth Expeditionary Force. You are currently in violation of Sapient Rights Protocol, Article 7, which prohibits aggressive military action against non-hostile civilian populations. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. You have 1 hour to comply. Failure to withdraw will be interpreted as hostile intent, and we will respond accordingly. Thraka's scales flushed dark red with rage. Sapient Rights Protocol? There is no such protocol. They are inventing laws. His intelligence officer checked the databases frantically. Commander, they are correct. The Sapient Rights Protocol was established 200 years ago by the Galactic Assembly. Article 7 does indeed prohibit what we are doing. However, enforcement has been selective and many species ignore it. Selective enforcement means it is not a real law, Thraka growled. It is a suggestion, and the Kresh Dominion does not take suggestions from anyone. He opened a channel to the human fleet, his voice dripping with contempt. Admiral Chen, this is Commander Thraka of the Kresh Dominion. You have no authority here. This system is unclaimed territory, and these Velans are legitimate salvage. Furthermore, you are outnumbered. I have 12 warships crewed by the finest warriors in the galaxy. Return to your pathetic little world before we add Earth to our list of conquests. There was a long pause before the human admiral responded. When the voice came through again, it had changed. The diplomatic formality was gone, replaced by something cold and hard. Commander Thraka, let me explain something to you. We traveled 9 days through hostile space to get here. We brought 47 warships, 16,000 Marines, and enough firepower to crack a moon. We did not come all this way to leave empty-handed. The Velans asked for help, and we are going to give it to them. Now you have two choices. You can leave peacefully, or you can leave in pieces. Either way, you are leaving. You have 1 hour to decide. The channel closed. Thraka stared at the display showing the human fleet in perfect battle formation. 47 ships. For strangers. Against all logic and self-interest. Something ancient in his predator's brain whispered a warning. These humans were not naive fools. They were something far more dangerous. They were zealots who believed in principles more than profit. And zealots, history had taught him, were willing to die for their beliefs. Commander Thraka let the full hour pass, using every minute to position his fleet into the traditional Kresh battle formation. His 12 warships formed a wall between the humans and the planet below, their weapons charged and shields at maximum. The formation had served the Kresh for thousands of years. It was a demonstration of strength, unity, and unbreakable resolve. The humans did not respond in kind. Their fleet spread out in what appeared to be complete chaos. Ships moved independently, breaking from formation and repositioning seemingly at random. Some accelerated directly toward the Kresh line. Others drifted sideways. A few even moved backward. What are they doing? Thraka demanded, staring at the tactical display. This is madness. They have no formation at all. His tactical officer shook his head in confusion. I cannot predict their movement patterns, Commander. They are not following any known combat doctrine. Then they are fools, Thraka snarled. All ships open fire. The Kresh fleet unleashed a devastating barrage of plasma torpedoes and particle beams, enough firepower to cripple any traditional battle line. The weapons streaked through space toward the human ships and missed. Almost all of them missed. The human vessels moved like nothing the Kresh had ever seen. They did not attempt to tank damage with their shields in the traditional manner. Instead, they dodged, weaved, and spun through space with an agility that should have been impossible for ships of their size. Point defense systems shot down the few torpedoes that came close, and the particle beams splashed harmlessly against angled shields positioned at the last possible second. How are they moving like that? Thraka roared. Those are capital ships, not fighters. Before his tactical officer could answer, the human fleet returned fire. Kinetic rounds, electromagnetic railgun shots moving at a significant fraction of light speed, slammed into the Kresh shields. The Kresh had encountered kinetic weapons before and generally dismissed them as primitive. Shields were designed to disperse energy weapons, but they also worked against physical projectiles. What the Kresh had not anticipated was the sheer volume and velocity of human kinetic fire. Thousands of rounds poured from the human ships, overwhelming the shield generators through simple mathematics, where energy weapons delivered heat and radiation that shields could deflect. Kinetic rounds delivered pure momentum. Each impact pushed the Kresh ships backward, disrupting their formation and throwing off their targeting solutions. Then the human energy weapons joined the assault. Laser batteries, plasma cannons, and something the Kresh sensors could not immediately identify, cut through the weakened shields and began carving into armor, shields failing on the crushing fang, an officer reported. The Blood Drinker has lost maneuvering thrusters. The Night Terror is reporting casualties. Thraka gripped his command throne hard enough to leave claw marks in the metal. This was impossible. His fleet should have been dominating these primitive newcomers. Instead, they were being torn apart by tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. The humans deployed attack craft, small one-pilot ships that swarmed around the larger Kresh vessels like insects. They moved independently, each pilot seemingly making their own decisions about targeting and movement. There was no coordination that the Kresh sensors could detect, yet they worked together with terrifying efficiency. One group of human attack craft focused their fire on the shield generators of the crushing Fang until the shields collapsed entirely. The moment the shields failed, a human frigate accelerated directly toward the now vulnerable cruiser. "Commander," the tactical officer screamed. "The human frigate is on a collision course with the crushing Fang." "They are not decelerating." Thraka watched in horror as the human frigate smashed into the Kresh cruiser at tremendous speed. The impact tore both ships apart in a brilliant explosion that lit up the darkness of space. "Did they just suicide?" Thraka whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. "Did they just deliberately destroy themselves to take out one of our ships?" "Sensors detect multiple escape pods ejecting from the human frigate before impact," the intelligence officer reported. "The crew evacuated seconds before collision. It was a calculated sacrifice of the ship, not the crew." "Who does that?" Thraka shouted. "Who throws away a perfectly functional warship?" The answer came from the human fleet. Another message broadcast across all channels. "This is Admiral Chen. Commander Thraka, you were warned. We are not playing by your rules. We are not fighting for glory or honor or territory. We are here to protect innocent people from predators like you. And we are very good at killing predators." The battle continued for another hour and 17 minutes. The Kresh fought with the desperation of beings who suddenly realized they had vastly miscalculated. But human tactics were unlike anything in the galactic military databases. They did not stand and trade fire like civilized species. They moved constantly, attacked from unexpected angles, and showed no concern for traditional combat honor. When a Kresh captain attempted to surrender his damaged ship, the humans accepted immediately and sent medical teams to help evacuate wounded Kresh crew members. When another Kresh captain tried to kamikaze his dying ship into a human dreadnought, the humans simply destroyed the bridge with a precise laser strike and boarded the vessel to save the crew in the lower decks. They fought like demons, but showed mercy, like saints. It was a combination that the Kresh psychology could not process. By the time Commander Thraka realized his fleet was doomed, only 3 Kresh ships remained functional. His flagship was crippled, drifting in space with main power offline and life support failing. The boarding pods attached to his hull with metallic clangs that echoed through the dying ship. Thraka drew his ceremonial blade and prepared to die fighting, as all Kresh commanders did when facing defeat. The human marines cut through the blast door with plasma torches and flooded into the bridge. Thraka charged at the first one through the door. His blade raised high. The human moved with shocking speed, deflecting the blade with an armored forearm and delivering a strike to Thraka's throat that left him gasping on the floor. The Marine pointed a weapon at his head, then spoke in perfect Kresh language. "Stay down, Commander. We are not here to kill you unless you make us." Thraka stared up at the human through the clear faceplate of the combat helmet. The creature's face was strange, flat and soft-featured, but its eyes held an intensity that Thraka recognized. This was a predator just like him. "Why?" Thraka gasped. "Why did you come?" "What do the Velans have that is worth 47 warships?" The Marine tilted his head slightly. "They have nothing we want, Commander. They needed help. That was enough." Below, on the surface of Kepler 442b, Elder Chitin Sage watched the battle through the colony's sensors with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans had defeated a Kresh fleet in barely 2 hours, using tactics and technology that seemed impossible. And now, according to communications, human Marines were landing at the colony entrance. Chitin Sage gathered his courage and went to meet them. The doors to the colony opened and he stepped out into the dim light of the setting sun. A dozen human figures in combat armor stood in a semicircle, their weapons lowered but ready. One of them stepped forward and removed her helmet. Chitin Sage saw a human face for the first time. The creature had dark skin, short dark hair, and eyes that seemed to hold both kindness and steel. "Elder Chitin Sage," the human asked in perfect Velan language. "I am Captain Maria Santos of the Earth Marine Corps. We received your distress call. I apologize for the delay. Are your people safe?" Chitin Sage felt his legs weaken. He had prepared for conquerors, for opportunists, for beings who would demand payment for their services. Instead, this human warrior stood before him and apologized for not arriving sooner. "You came," he whispered. "You actually came." Captain Santos smiled, and Chitin Sage saw something in that expression that made his heart ache. It was genuine warmth, completely without calculation or hidden agenda. "Of course we came, Elder. You asked for help." Behind Captain Santos, Chitin Sage could see more humans moving through the colony. Some wore combat armor, establishing a defensive perimeter. Others wore different uniforms with red symbols on them, and they were moving directly toward the medical bay. "What are those humans doing?" Chitin Sage asked nervously. "Medical team," Captain Santos explained. "They are here to treat your wounded. We brought supplies, food, and equipment to help repair your shields. My engineers are already looking at your power generators." "But why? What do you want in return?" Captain Santos looked confused by the question. "Want in return?" "Elder, you were under attack. You needed help. We do not charge people for doing the right thing." Chitin Sage stared at this strange creature from Earth, and for the first time in 3 months, he allowed himself to feel hope. Perhaps the galaxy was about to learn something it had forgotten long ago. 3 days had passed since the battle, and Elder Chitin Sage still could not fully comprehend what he was witnessing. The human Marines had established a defensive perimeter around the colony, their weapons pointed at the stars in case more Kresh ships arrived. Human engineers worked alongside Velan technicians to repair the damaged shield generators. Human medical personnel moved through the colony's hospital, treating wounded Velans with equipment and medicines that were remarkably effective, despite being designed for a completely different biology. The humans had even brought food. Real food, not the recycled protein paste that the Velans had been surviving on for weeks. The humans called it humanitarian aid, though the translation software struggled with the term. The closest Velan equivalent meant gift to those who suffer, but even that did not capture the full meaning. Chitin Sage found Captain Santos in the colony's central plaza, supervising the installation of a new atmospheric processor. The human captain was reviewing a holographic display with one of the Velan engineers, pointing out optimal placement for maximum efficiency. "Captain Santos," Chitin Sage called out. "May I speak with you privately?" "Of course, Elder." Santos handed the datapad to the engineer and followed Chitin Sage to a quiet observation deck overlooking the colony's terraced gardens. For a long moment, Chitin Sage simply stared out at the landscape his people had cultivated over decades. Then he turned to face the human. "I must ask you a question, Captain, and I need you to answer honestly. Why did you come? Please do not tell me again that we asked for help. Everyone in this galaxy knows that nobody helps strangers without expecting something in return. What does Earth want from us?" Captain Santos was quiet for a moment, her strange human face showing an expression that Chitin Sage had learned to recognize as thoughtfulness. "You want the honest answer?" she finally said. "Earth wants nothing from you, Elder. We came because you were in trouble and we could help. That is the entire reason, but that makes no sense." Chitin Sage's antenna vibrated with frustration. "You brought 47 warships across hostile space. You lost a frigate and 73 Marines in the battle. You are spending enormous resources to repair our colony and feed our people. There must be some calculation, some benefit that we are not seeing." Santos sighed and leaned against the railing, looking out at the gardens. "Elder, can I tell you a story about Earth history? If you believe it will help me understand. About 80 years ago, before we achieved faster-than-light travel, Earth was a mess. We had divided ourselves into hundreds of nations, and we fought constantly over resources, beliefs, and territory. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times. But throughout all that chaos, there were always people who helped others simply because it was right. Doctors who traveled to war zones to treat the wounded. Teachers who educated children in poverty. Volunteers who rescued people from natural disasters. They gained nothing from these actions except the knowledge that they had made a difference. Chitin Sage clicked his mandibles skeptically. "Those are individuals, Captain. You are talking about government policy. Governments always act in self-interest." "You would think so, wouldn't you?" Santos smiled sadly. "But when Earth finally unified and joined the galactic community, we discovered something that horrified us. We found a galaxy where the strong dominated the weak, where slavery was tolerated, where species like yours could scream for help and be ignored because helping was not profitable. and we decided that we would not accept that reality. So Earth seeks to conquer the galaxy? To impose your values on others? No, Elder. We seek to offer an alternative. We established the Sapient Rights Protocol 80 years ago, based on human moral philosophy. Most galactic civilizations signed it because it made them look civilized, but nobody actually enforced it. We decided to change that. When someone calls for help, we answer. When someone is being oppressed, we intervene. Not because it benefits Earth, but because it is the right thing to do. Chitin Sage felt his legs weaken, and he sat down on a nearby bench. Captain Santos, do you understand how insane that sounds to galactic ears? The entire structure of galactic civilization is built on mutual self-interest. Every treaty, every alliance, every trade agreement is calculated for maximum benefit. You are describing a philosophy that will bankrupt your species. Maybe, Santos agreed. But we would rather be bankrupt and moral than wealthy and complicit in evil. Before Chitin Sage could respond, Vespa came running onto the observation deck, her antennae waving frantically. Elder. Captain, we are receiving multiple transmissions from across the galaxy. The news of the battle has spread. Everyone wants to know about Earth and the humans. The next hours were chaotic. Messages poured in from dozens of civilizations. Some were curious, some were alarmed, some were angry. The Kresh Dominion sent a formal demand for reparations, claiming that Earth had attacked their ships without provocation and demanding compensation for the destroyed vessels. The most significant message came from the assembled councils, the closest thing the galaxy had to a central government. They demanded that human representatives travel to the council homeworld to explain their actions and their intentions. 5 days later, Ambassador David Okafor arrived at the colony aboard a human diplomatic vessel. He was an older human with dark skin and gray hair, and he carried himself with a quiet dignity that reminded Chitin Sage of ancient scholars from Velan history. Elder Chitin Sage, Ambassador Okafor said with a respectful bow, I am here to formally establish diplomatic relations between Earth and the Velan people, if you are willing. Ambassador, we have nothing to offer Earth in return. Our colony is poor, our resources limited. We cannot repay you for what you have done. We do not require repayment, Elder. However, if you are willing, Earth would like to establish a joint research station here. Your terraforming technology is remarkable, and we believe we could learn much from your people. In exchange, we would provide defense and trade access to Earth's markets. Chitin Sage stared at the human ambassador. You want to learn from us? But we are pacifists. We have no military knowledge to share. Elder, Okafor said gently, Earth has plenty of military knowledge. What we lack is wisdom in living peacefully. Your people have mastered something we still struggle with. That is worth more to us than any weapon. The formal agreement was signed that evening. It was the first official alliance between Earth and another species, and the news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Other species began reaching out to Earth. Quietly at first, through secret channels and encrypted messages, small species, weak species, oppressed species that had been ignored by the major powers for centuries. They all asked the same question, would Earth help them too? And Earth's answer was always the same, yes. 2 weeks after the battle, Ambassador Okafor traveled to the assembled councils to face the judgment of the galactic powers. The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from 200 species seated in concentric circles around a central platform. Chancellor Vortis, a towering crystalline being from the Silicon Collective, spoke first. Ambassador Okafor, Earth has violated numerous protocols by intervening in the Kepler 442b situation. You attacked Kresh vessels without formal declaration of war. You provided military aid to a species with whom you had no formal alliance. You have destabilized regional power structures. What do you have to say for yourself? Okafor stood calmly on the platform, his hands clasped behind his back. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. Chancellor, Earth's position is simple. We will establish mutual defense pacts with any species that requests our protection. We will respond to distress calls from any sapient beings in danger. We will not tolerate slavery, genocide, or forced subjugation of civilian populations. These principles are non-negotiable. The chamber erupted in shouts and protests. Species that profited from slavery or conquest roared their objections. Even some of the peaceful species seemed alarmed by this declaration. You cannot simply decide to enforce your morality on the galaxy. roared Representative Thraka Prime of the Kresh Dominion, Commander Thraka's superior. You are a young species with no right to interfere in affairs that predate your civilization by millennia. I disagree, Okafor said calmly. Slavery is not a cultural practice we must respect. It is a crime against sapient beings. Genocide is not a political matter open to debate, it is evil. And Earth will not stand by and watch evil triumph simply because opposing it is inconvenient. This is madness, shouted the representative from the Morvani Empire. You will bankrupt yourselves trying to police the galaxy. You will make enemies of every powerful species. Earth will be destroyed. Perhaps Okafor agreed. But we will be destroyed standing for something we believe in. Can all of you say the same? The chamber fell silent. Then Elder Chiton Sage, who had been granted permission to speak as a witness, stood from his seat in the gallery. Honored representatives, he began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. For 3 months my people cried out for help. We sent distress signals to every species in this chamber, and you all were silent. Some of you acknowledged our transmissions but declined to help. Others simply ignored us. We were going to die, and not one of you cared enough to intervene. He paused. His anten 6 months had passed since the battle above Kepler 442b, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Velen colony had transformed into a thriving joint research station. Human engineers worked alongside Velen scientists, sharing knowledge and building technologies that neither species could have developed alone. The population had tripled as Velens from other worlds came to see the place where everything had changed. They came to see the species that had answered their call when no one else would. Captain Maria Santos stood in the newly constructed memorial garden at the center of the station. 73 names were carved into a wall of polished stone, one for each Marine who had died defending people they had never met. The names were written in both English and Velen script, and fresh flowers were placed at the memorial every day by Velen colonists who wanted to honor the fallen. She was not alone. Elder Chiton Sage stood beside her, as he often did these days. The old Velen had become something of an ambassador for his species, traveling to Earth several times to speak about the partnership between their peoples. I received interesting news today, Chiton Sage said quietly. The Mylar Collective has formally requested Earth's protection. They are the 17th species to do so. Santos nodded. I heard. The Senate is still debating whether we can actually protect 17 species scattered across half the galaxy. Some people think we are overextending ourselves. Are they right? Santos was quiet for a moment, watching a group of human and Velen children playing together in the gardens. The children had invented a hybrid game that combined elements of both cultures, and they switched between English and Velen language without seeming to notice. Maybe, she admitted, but what is the alternative? Ignore them? Let them suffer because helping is inconvenient? That is not who we want to be, even if it costs you everything. Even then. Before Chiton Sage could respond, Vespa hurried toward them, her antennae vibrating with excitement. Captain! Elder, you need to see this. The news feeds from across the galaxy. They followed her to the communications center, where dozens of screens showed broadcasts from various galactic news networks. The images were stunning. On world after world, protests were erupting. Not protests against Earth, but protests demanding that their own governments adopt human principles. On the Morvani homeworld, millions of citizens marched through the capital demanding an end to their empire's slave trade. On the Silicon Collective's primary station, workers were striking and refusing to produce weapons for aggressive species. Even in the heart of the Kresh Dominion, there were reports of civil unrest as younger Kresh questioned whether conquest was truly their only path. The idea is spreading, Vespa said with wonder in her voice. What Earth did for us has inspired people across the galaxy. They are asking why their own governments did not help. They are demanding change. Santos felt a chill run through her. This could start wars. When you challenge power structures this fundamental, the powerful do not give up peacefully. Perhaps, Chiton Sage agreed. But the alternative is to allow injustice to continue unchallenged. Is that better? The news from the assembled councils confirmed Santos's fears. The galaxy was fracturing into two camps, progressive species that wanted to embrace the sapient rights protocol and enforce it across the galaxy, traditional powers that saw Earth's philosophy as a threat to the natural order of strong species dominating weak ones. Tensions were rising. The Kresh Dominion had begun massing fleets along their borders. The Morvani Empire had recalled their ambassadors from Earth. War seemed inevitable. Then something unexpected happened. The Zilthani arrived. The Zilthani were an ancient species, one of the first to achieve faster-than-light travel millions of years ago. They had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, and they rarely involved themselves in galactic politics. Most species viewed them as observers, wise but detached from the concerns of younger races. When their massive world ship appeared in Earth's solar system, every human military vessel went to high alert. The Zilthani vessel was the size of a small moon, containing technology that humanity could barely comprehend. Ambassador Okafor was the one who received their delegation. The Zilthani representative was an ancient being that existed partially in multiple dimensions, appearing as a shifting pattern of light and geometry that hurt to look at directly. Ambassador Okafor, the Zilthani communicated directly into his mind, "We have watched humanity since you achieved faster-than-light capability. We have observed your species with great interest. We are honored by your attention," Okafor said carefully, unsure whether the Zilthani were here as friends or enemies. "We have seen countless species rise in this galaxy. Most follow the same pattern. They achieve technology, they seek resources, they dominate others when possible. They are dominated when they are weak. It is a cycle that has repeated for millions of years. We have long wondered if any species would break this cycle." The Zilthani's form shifted, colors rippling through patterns that Okafor somehow understood represented approval. "Humanity has broken the cycle. You have chosen compassion over profit. You have chosen principle over power. This is unprecedented in our observation of galactic history." "What does that mean for us?" Okafor asked. "It means we will support you. The Zilthani will not fight your wars for you, but we will provide knowledge, technology, and diplomatic support. We will tell the galaxy that Earth's path is worthy of protection, not because we agree with all your choices, but because evolution requires variation. You represent a new way of existing in the galaxy, and such novelty must be allowed to flourish or fail on its own merits." The news of Zilthani support changed everything. Species that had been preparing for war against Earth suddenly reconsidered. The Zilthani were beyond politics, beyond conflict. Their endorsement carried weight that no military force could match. Within weeks, more species began signing mutual defense pacts with Earth, not because they feared human military might, but because they wanted to be part of something different, something better. The Kresh Dominion did not surrender peacefully. Commander Thraka Prime, humiliated by his subordinates' defeat and enraged by Earth's philosophy, launched a massive assault on 3 human-protected worlds simultaneously. The battle was fierce and costly. Earth lost ships and personnel, but they held the line, and more importantly, Kresh civilians began questioning why they were dying to preserve the right to enslave others. Internal divisions within the Dominion grew until the government faced civil war from within. In the end, Thraka Prime was overthrown by his own people. The new Kresh government was not peaceful or benevolent, but they agreed to cease aggressive expansion and honor the Sapient Rights Protocol. It was not perfect, but it was progress. 1 year after the rescue at Kepler 442b, Elder Chitin Sage traveled to Earth for a formal ceremony. The human government was awarding the Velen Star of Hope to every human who had participated in the rescue operation. It was a medal created by the Velens themselves, crafted from crystal that had been grown in the gardens of the colony. Captain Santos stood in formation with thousands of other Marines, soldiers, and crew members in a vast plaza in front of Earth's Unity Hall. Human leaders and representatives from dozens of species watched as each person received their medal. When it was Santos's turn, Elder Chitin Sage himself placed the medal around her neck. The old Velen looked up at her with his multifaceted eyes, and she saw tears forming there. "Thank you," he said simply, "for answering, for coming, for showing the galaxy what we could be instead of what we have been." Santos looked down at the medal, a beautiful spiral of blue crystal that caught the light and fractured it into rainbows. Then she looked past Chitin Sage at the crowd. Humans and aliens stood together watching this ceremony. Children of a dozen species played in the plaza gardens. Representatives from species that had been enemies for centuries were talking peacefully about cooperation instead of conflict. It was not perfect. There were still wars, Still injustice, still species that clung to the old ways. But something fundamental had shifted in the galaxy. The idea that the strong had an obligation to protect the weak, that morality mattered more than profit, had taken root. And ideas once planted were impossible to completely destroy. That evening, Santos returned to the Memorial Garden on Kepler 442b through a long-range transport. She wanted to see the place where it all began one more time before shipping out to her next assignment. Earth was establishing a defense network across 17 systems now, and she had been chosen to command one of the new stations. She stood before the memorial wall, reading the names of the fallen in the soft light of the setting sun. 73 people who would never go home. 73 people who had died for strangers. But because of their sacrifice, thousands of beings across the galaxy were living free instead of in chains. Millions were living with hope. The escape pod tumbled through the darkness of space like a broken toy. Its hull was scorched black and deep gashes cut across its surface. Inside, a single human woman lay strapped to a medical bed, her breathing shallow and weak. The pod's emergency beacon flickered with the last drops of power, sending out a desperate call that no one had answered for 3 weeks. Captain Vrichtal of the Kreshvara trading vessel, Harmony's Gift, noticed the signal on his scanner. His 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. The signature was old, almost ancient by galactic standards. Human technology. Everyone in the Concordat knew what that meant. Captain, we should ignore it, his second officer clicked in their native language. Humans are extinct. This is probably a trap set by the Devourers. Vrichtal's antennae twitched with irritation. And if it is not a trap? If there is truly someone alive in that pod? Then they have been drifting for weeks. They are already dead. But Vrichtal was already changing course. He had lost his own family to the Devourers 5 years ago. He remembered watching his homeworld burn from orbit, helpless to save his clutchmates. If there was even a small chance someone was alive in that pod, he would not abandon them to the void. The Harmony's Gift pulled the escape pod into its cargo bay. Vrichtal and his medical officer approached carefully, weapons ready. The Devourers were known for their tricks. But when they opened the pod, they found only the woman. She was small by the standards of most species, barely reaching Vrichtal's shoulder. Her skin was dark brown and her black hair was matted with dried blood. The medical scanner showed severe radiation poisoning, multiple fractures, and massive internal bleeding. She should have been dead already. Remarkable, the medical officer whistled. Her body is still fighting. Humans were known for their stubbornness, but this is incredible. They rushed her to the medical bay. For 3 days, she hovered between life and death. The Kreshvara medical technology was advanced, but human biology was difficult. Most of the Concordat's medical data on humans had been lost when Earth fell. The medical officer worked from old records and instinct, praying to the void that he was doing more good than harm. On the 4th day, the woman opened her eyes. Vrichtal was sitting beside her bed when it happened. He had taken to spending his off-duty hours there, watching over her. He told himself it was simple curiosity, but deep down he knew it was something else. Saving her felt like making up for all the lives he had failed to save. "Where am I?" she whispered in Standard Galactic, her accent strange but understandable. "You are safe," Vrichtal replied, keeping his voice gentle. "You are aboard the Kreshvara vessel Harmony's Gift. I am Captain Vrichtal. We found your escape pod drifting near the Frontier Nebula." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "The Prometheus, my ship. Is anyone else? You were alone in the pod. I am sorry." She closed her eyes and tears ran down her cheeks. Vrichtal had seen grief across 100 species and it always looked the same. He reached out carefully and placed one of his chitinous hands on her arm. She did not pull away. "What is your name?" he asked softly. "Sarah. Dr. Sarah Chen. I was the lead archaeologist on the Prometheus." Over the following weeks, Sarah healed. Her body responded well to the treatments, and soon she was walking the corridors of the ship. The crew was fascinated by her. Most of them had never seen a human before. They had only heard stories about the species that had been wiped out during their very first contact with the galaxy. Sarah told them about the Prometheus. It had been an archaeological research vessel, exploring ancient ruins in deep space. They had been far from any settled systems when the Devourers found them. The attack had been brutal and swift. Sarah had barely made it to an escape pod before the ship exploded. "We were searching for something," she told Vrichtel one evening as they shared a meal in the observation deck. Something important. But I guess that does not matter anymore. Why were you so far from help? Vrichtel asked. The Concordat has dozens of species. Why was humanity exploring alone? Sarah's smile was sad. Because Earth fell 30 years ago, Captain. I was not there when it happened. I was already in deep space on a different mission. By the time I heard the news, there was nothing left to return to. The Prometheus crew took me in. Most of them were not human. They were good people. Vrichtel felt his heart's ache for her. To be the last of her kind, to carry that loneliness. I am truly sorry, Dr. Chen. Please call me Sarah. She looked out at the stars streaming past. You know what the worst part is? The Devourers did not even have a reason. They did not want Earth's resources. They did not fear humanity as a threat. They destroyed us simply because they could, because that is what they do. Yes, Vrichtel agreed quietly. That is what they do. When they finally reached a Concordat station, Sarah insisted on speaking to Vrichtel privately before they docked. Captain, I owe you my life. You and your crew saved me when you had no reason to, when it might have even been dangerous for you. Vrichtel waved his antennae in the Kreshvara gesture of dismissal. You owe us nothing. Saving a life is not a transaction. It is what separates us from the Devourers. It is what makes us civilized. Sarah smiled, but there was something intense in her eyes. Even so, I will not forget what you did. Someday, somehow, I will repay this debt. There is no debt, Sarah. Then let me say it differently. You saved me, Captain. You showed me that kindness still exists in this galaxy. That is a gift I will carry with me always. The station was a massive ring-shaped structure orbiting a blue giant star. Thousands of ships from dozens of species moved around it like insects around a hive. Sarah stared at it with wonder. She had not seen such a concentration of civilized life in years. The Concordat Council agreed to grant Sarah asylum and citizenship. They offered her work as a consultant on human technology and culture. It was strange, she thought, to be a consultant on her own extinct species. Like being a living museum exhibit. But Sarah accepted. She threw herself into the work, helping the Concordat understand old human systems and databases. She also began working on defensive technology, trying to find ways to help in the war against the Devourers. Vrichtel was promoted to admiral and given command of a defense fleet. He and Sarah remained friends, speaking regularly across the communication networks. She never told him about the message she sometimes drafted late at night. A complex mathematical sequence followed by words in English. She never told him that Earth's fall had not been quite what everyone believed. 1 year after her rescue, Sarah stood in her small apartment on the Concordat station and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of any scanner, beyond the knowledge of the Concordat or the Devourers, something was waiting, something that would change everything. Not yet, she whispered to herself, but soon. She touched the small data crystal she wore on a chain around her neck. It had been with her in the escape pod, protected in a radiation-proof case. Inside it was information that could reshape the galaxy. But the time was not right. Not yet. First she needed to wait, to watch, to learn everything she could about the Concordat and its war with the Devourers. And when the moment was right, she would send the message that would bring humanity home. 5 years passed like water flowing through open fingers. Sarah Chen became a familiar face on Concordat Central Station. She worked in the technology division, helping engineers understand ancient human systems that the Concordat had recovered from destroyed human colonies. Her expertise saved countless lives as she helped improve shield technology and weapon systems. But the war was going badly. The Devourers were winning. Every month brought news of another world falling, another species facing extinction. The Concordat military fought bravely, but they were always one step behind. The Devourers had better weapons, better ships, and no mercy whatsoever. Admiral Vrichtel's fleet had grown, but so had the scars on his carapace. He had fought in 17 major battles in 5 years. His ship had been destroyed twice, and he had barely escaped with his life. The cheerful trader Captain Sarah had first met was now a hardened military commander. Tired but unbroken, they still spoke regularly, though now their conversations were often interrupted by emergency calls. Sarah watched her friend age under the weight of command. She saw the Concordat slowly losing hope. It was time. Sarah requested a meeting with the Concordat Council. She had never done so before, and the request itself raised eyebrows. The council gathered in their great chamber. representatives of 37 species sitting in a circular arrangement. Sarah stood in the center, feeling very small and very alone. Dr. Chen, the council speaker began. She was a tall, crystalline being whose voice chimed like bells. You have served the Concordat well these past 5 years. What brings you before us today? I wish to request use of the Deep Space Communication Array, Sarah said clearly. The most powerful transmitter the Concordat possesses. Murmurs rippled through the council. The DSCA was an enormous structure, built to send messages across the entire galaxy. It was used only for the most critical announcements. For what purpose? The speaker asked. I need to send a message into deep space, beyond the edges of known territory. To whom? Another council member demanded. There is nothing beyond the frontier except empty space and dead worlds. Sarah took a deep breath. I need to send a message to humanity. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted in a dozen languages. The speaker had to call for order 3 times before silence returned. Dr. Chen, the speaker said slowly, humanity is extinct. You yourself are believed to be the last human alive. Who exactly do you believe you are contacting? I cannot explain everything, Sarah said. Not yet. But I am asking you to trust me. Give me access to the array for 1 hour. Let me send my message. If nothing happens, then you can call me crazy and ignore me forever. But if I am right, then what I am about to do will change the course of this war. This is madness, several council members protested. But then Admiral Vrichtal stood up. He had been sitting in the military observer section, and his presence commanded attention. Council, he said firmly, I speak for Dr. Chen. She has earned our trust through 5 years of dedicated service. She has never lied to us, never betrayed us. If she says this is important, then I believe her. Grant her request. The speaker looked at Sarah for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. Very well. You may use the array, but we will be monitoring everything you send, Dr. Chen. If this is some kind of trick, it is not, Sarah promised. Thank you. 3 days later, Sarah stood in the control room of the Deep Space Communication Array. It was a massive orbital platform, bristling with transmission dishes the size of cities. The power it could generate was enough to send a signal that would reach the far side of the galaxy. Vrichtal stood beside her. He had insisted on being there, both as support and as a witness. Several council security officers watched from the back of the room, hands on their weapons. Sarah, Vrichtal said quietly, what are you really doing? She smiled at him, and he saw hope in her eyes for the first time in years. I am calling my family home. She activated the array. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. First, she transmitted a complex mathematical sequence. It was based on prime numbers and quantum frequencies, a pattern that could not occur naturally. It would get attention from anyone who knew what to look for. Then she spoke in English, her voice being recorded and broadcast with all the power the array could generate. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, Prometheus Archaeological Division, Survivor Identification Number Alpha 739. I am transmitting from Concordat Central Station. Package Alpha Omega is activated. Humanity received your gift with gratitude. The debt will be paid in full. Come home. She repeated the message 3 times, then added one more line. And please hurry. Our friends need us. The transmission ended. The control room was silent except for the hum of cooling systems. Sarah shut down the array and turned to face the others. Now what? Vrichtal asked. Now we wait. 6 months. That is how long it will take for my message to reach its destination and for the reply to arrive. 6 months? Vrichtal's antennae drooped. Sarah, in 6 months, half the Concordat could be destroyed. The Devourers are planning their largest offensive ever. We have intelligence that they are gathering their entire fleet for a massive strike. I know, Sarah said softly. That is why I waited so long. I needed to be sure the situation was desperate enough. Because what is coming, it will change everything, and not everyone will be happy about it. The council demanded explanations. Sarah gave them very little. She told them that humanity had not been completely destroyed, that some had survived, that they had been preparing for their return. But she refused to give details. You will understand when they arrive, she insisted. Some things must be seen to be believed. The council did not know whether to put her in prison or give her a medal. In the end, they did nothing. They simply waited as she had asked. What choice did they have? The war grew worse. The Devourers launched their offensive exactly as intelligence had predicted. Concordat worlds burned. Entire species were wiped out in days. The military was stretched to breaking point. Admiral Vriktal's fleet was assigned to defend his own homeworld. The Kreshvara system had already been attacked twice. Intelligence suggested a third attack was coming soon, and this one would be the end. Vriktal spoke to Sarah one last time before the battle. "If nothing happens," he said quietly. "If your message brings no response, then this will likely be goodbye, my friend. The Devourers are coming with everything they have. We will fight, but they will come," Sarah said with absolute certainty. "I promise you, Vriktal, humanity will come, and when they do, they will remember that you saved one of us when you had no reason to. That debt will be repaid. I told you there is no debt. I know, but we remember anyway." The 6-month deadline arrived. The Devourer fleet entered the Kreshvara system with overwhelming force. 3,000 ships, enough to glass the planet 10 times over. Vriktal's defense fleet numbered barely 200 vessels. He prepared to sell his life dearly. Then every sensor on every ship went insane at once. Space itself was tearing open. Not in one place, but in hundreds. All around the Kreshvara system, reality ripped apart like paper. The energy readings were impossible. Nothing in known physics could do this. Through the tears in space came ships, human ships. But they were like nothing the Concordat had ever seen. They moved in ways that violated the laws of motion. Their hulls shimmered with energy that seemed to bend light around them. And there were so many of them. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. Vriktal stared at his scanner in disbelief. His communications officer was receiving a transmission, a human voice speaking in perfect standard galactic. "Concordat Defense Fleet, this is Admiral Maya Okonkwo of the Human Reclamation Armada. We received Dr. Chen's message. We are here to repay an old debt. Please stand aside. We will handle the Devourers." Vriktal found his voice. "This is Admiral Vriktal. We welcome your aid, but there are 3,000 Devourer ships. Even with your numbers, Admiral," the human voice said, and there was steel in it. "Watch and learn what happens when you make an enemy of humanity." The human fleet moved forward, and the Devourers learned what it meant to face an army born of legends beyond imagination. The battle that followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The human ships moved through space like sharks through water. They did not fly in straight lines like normal vessels. They flickered in and out of existence, appearing behind Devourer ships and unleashing weapons that tore through armor like it was paper. Some human vessels simply vanished when attacked. The Devourer weapons passing through empty space where a ship had been a moment before. Admiral Vriktal watched from his command deck, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. His tactical officer was speaking in a rapid stream of clicks, trying to make sense of what the sensors were showing. "Captain, their ships are moving through higher dimensions. They are not just flying through space, they are folding it around themselves. And their weapons? I cannot even classify them. Some use pure energy, some seem to manipulate gravity itself, and others—" The officer paused, his voice filled with awe. "Others appear to be rewriting the laws of physics in localized areas." In less than 2 hours, 3,000 Devourer ships had been reduced to scrap and fleeing survivors. The human fleet did not pursue the ones that ran. They simply let them go, carrying their terror back to the Devourer Empire. When the battle ended, a single human ship approached Vriktal's flagship. It was smaller than a battleship but larger than a cruiser, and it moved with a grace that seemed almost alive. A docking request came through. Vriktal granted it immediately. Admiral Maya Okonkwo strode onto his bridge like she owned it. She was tall for a human, nearly 6.5 feet with dark skin and silver hair cut short in a military style. She wore a uniform that seemed to be made of liquid metal, shifting colors in the light. Behind her came 2 guards in armor that made them look like walking fortresses. But what struck Vriktal most were her eyes. They were human eyes, brown and warm, but they held depths of knowledge and experience that seemed impossible for a single lifetime. "Admiral Vriktal," she said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "It is an honor to finally meet you." Vriktal grasped her hand carefully, mindful of his chitinous strength. "Admiral Okonkwo, your arrival is— I do not have words. You saved my world, my people, everything." "Thank you for saving Dr. Chen," Maya replied simply. "Without her signal, we would not have known when to return. You gave us the gift of perfect timing. I do not understand, Fricktal admitted. Sarah said humanity was not extinct, but this... He gestured at the view screen where thousands of human ships floated in formation. Where did you all come from? How is this possible? Maya smiled, and it was a sad smile. Walk with me, Admiral. There is much to explain, and not all of it is easy to hear. They went to Vricktal's private office. Maya dismissed her guards, and they stood alone in the small room lined with star charts and battle honors. 30 years ago, Maya began, the Devourers attacked Earth. That part of the story you know is true. They came without warning, without mercy. Their fleet glassed our world, killing billions in a matter of days. It was humanity's first contact with alien life, and it was genocide. Vricktal's antennae drooped in sympathy. He had seen the same thing happen to other species. But what the galaxy does not know, Maya continued, is that we had a plan. 10 years before the Devourers came, human archaeologists found something on Mars. We called them the Architects, an ancient race that existed billions of years ago. They left behind technology that we could barely understand, but we studied it in secret. Why in secret? Fricktal asked. Because we were afraid. Afraid of what other species might do if they knew we had access to such power. Afraid of what we might do to ourselves. So only a small number of people knew. Scientists, military leaders, certain government officials. They formed a secret organization called Protocol Exodus. Maya walked to the window and looked out at the stars. When the Devourers attacked, we had just enough warning to activate the protocol. Hidden gates built with architect technology opened all over Earth. In 3 days we evacuated over 8 billion humans through those gates. Not all of them. Not even most of them. But enough. Enough to ensure humanity would survive. Where did you go? Fricktal breathed. To a pocket dimension. A space that exists alongside our universe but separate from it. The architects built it long ago, and they left it for whoever was worthy to find it. Inside that dimension, time moves differently. For every year that passes outside, 5 years pass inside. We have been there for 30 years of galactic time. For us, it has been 150 years. The implications crashed over Vricktal like a wave. 150 years of preparation, of growth, of advancement. We did not just survive, Maya said quietly. We thrived. We took the architect technology and built upon it. We advanced further in a century and a half than we had in our entire previous history. We built new ships, new weapons, new ways of understanding the universe. And we prepared for the day we would return. Why did you wait so long? Vricktal asked. Why not return immediately and take revenge on the Devourers? Maya turned to face him. Because revenge is not justice. We needed time to make sure we would not become like the Devourers ourselves. We needed time to build not just an army, but a society that could wield such power responsibly. And we needed to wait for the right moment, the right reason to return. Sarah's message. Yes. When Dr. Chen sent her signal, she told us 3 things. First, that there were good species in the galaxy worth saving. Her message described how the Kreshvara saved her life at risk to themselves, expecting nothing in return. Second, that the Concordat was losing the war and needed help desperately. And third, that the time was right for humanity to take its place in the galaxy again. Vricktal sat down heavily in his chair. How many of you are there? In the pocket dimension? Over 12 billion. We brought 5 billion with us on this expedition. The rest remain behind, continuing to build and prepare. What you see outside is our reclamation fleet. It is not even our largest force. 12 billion, Vricktal repeated in wonder. We thought you were extinct. We mourned the loss of your species. And all this time you were out there growing stronger. We mourn too, Maya said softly, for the billions who died on Earth, for the history and culture that was lost, for the years we spent in exile. But we also swore an oath. We would return. And when we did, we would make sure that what happened to us never happened to another species. That is why we are here, Admiral, not just to save the Concordat, but to end the Devourers once and for all. Over the following days, more Concordat leaders arrived to meet with the humans. Sarah Chen came with them, and there was a joyful reunion between her and the fleet from humanity. She had spent 5 years alone among aliens. Now she was home again in a way. The humans shared some of their technology with the Concordat, though not all of it. They were careful, Maya explained, not to give too much too quickly. Rapid advancement could be as dangerous as no advancement at all. But what they did share was revolutionary. New shield systems that could shrug off Devourer weapons. Sensors that could detect ships light years away. medical technology that could heal injuries that were previously fatal. And they shared knowledge. The humans had studied the Devourers during their long exile. They knew their tactics, their strategies, their weaknesses. They knew how to fight them and how to win. The Concordat Council officially welcomed humanity into their alliance. There was some fear, of course. The humans were so powerful, so advanced. What if they decided to conquer instead of help? But Maya addressed those fears directly in a speech before the entire council. "We know what it is like to be helpless," she said. "We know the terror of seeing your world burn and being unable to stop it. We will never inflict that on another species, never. We have power now, yes, great power, but we have also learned responsibility. The architects left us a gift, but also a test. The test is whether we will use their legacy to build or to destroy. We choose to build. We choose to protect. And we choose to stand beside the Concordat as equals, not as masters." The council believed her. How could they not? The humans had already proven their intentions by saving Kreshvara homeworld. As news of humanity's return spread through the galaxy, reactions were mixed. Some species celebrated, grateful for powerful new allies. Others were frightened, worried about what this new force might mean. But the Devourers had a very different reaction. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they felt something they had never experienced before: fear. The Concordat military observers could not believe what they were seeing. In a massive training area on one of humanity's mobile battle stations, human soldiers were demonstrating their capabilities. Admiral Vrichtal stood with a group of Concordat officers watching as humanity showed them exactly what kind of army they had built. The first group to demonstrate were called the Vanguard. They wore armor that seemed to be made of dark blue liquid crystal that flowed across their bodies. A Vanguard soldier stepped into the center of the training ground and the demonstration began. Practice drones fired weapons at him from every direction. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, energy beams. The soldier did not dodge. He did not hide behind cover. Instead, his armor flickered and the weapons passed right through him as if he was not there. He had phased slightly out of normal space, existing in multiple dimensions at once. Then he moved. One moment he was standing still. The next he was behind the drones, his rifle firing with perfect accuracy. Each shot destroyed a target. When the drones tried to adapt, firing at where he would be instead of where he was, he simply phased again, becoming untouchable. "Our Vanguard soldiers can shift between dimensions for short periods," explained Colonel James Rivera, the human officer conducting the demonstration. "They can pass through solid matter, avoid weapons fire, and attack from unexpected angles. A single Vanguard squad can hold a position against forces 10 times their number." The Concordat officers looked at each other in amazement. One of them, a military historian, spoke up nervously. "This seems almost magical."
"How is it possible?"
"The architect technology taught us that reality has more layers than most species realize," Colonel Rivera said. "We learn to move between those layers. It is not magic. It is advanced physics, but I understand why it might seem that way." The next demonstration featured the Wraith pilots. A fighter craft sat on the platform, sleek and dangerous looking. A young human woman, barely out of her teenage years, approached it. She wore a skin-tight suit covered in glowing lines. "Wraith pilots do not fly their ships," Rivera explained. "They become their ships." The pilot placed her hands on the fighter's hull. The glowing lines on her suit pulsed, and suddenly her eyes rolled back and she went rigid. But the fighter came alive. It lifted off the platform and began moving through an obstacle course with impossible precision. It spun, dove, and weaved through barriers at speeds that should have been fatal. "Her consciousness has merged with the ship's systems," Rivera continued. "She experiences what the ship experiences, thinks at computer speeds, reacts in nanoseconds. When she is merged, she is the deadliest pilot in the known galaxy, because she does not have to think about controlling the ship. She is the ship." Vrichtal watched in wonder as the fighter performed maneuvers that would have torn apart any normal craft. Finally it landed and the pilot disconnected. She stumbled slightly and medical personnel rushed to support her. "The process is exhausting," Rivera admitted. "Pilots can only stay merged for a few hours at most. But in combat, a few hours is more than enough." Then came the Titans. Vrichtal heard them before he saw them. Heavy footsteps that shook the ground. 4 figures emerged from a transport vehicle and every observer gasped. They were massive, 12 feet tall and built like living tanks. Their armor was thick and bristling with weapons. But these were not robots. They were humans. enhanced, modified, and transformed into super soldiers that seemed more myth than reality. One of them stepped forward and removed his helmet. His face was still human, still recognizable, but there was a power in his eyes that was almost frightening. Titans are volunteers, Rivera said. They undergo extensive biological and technological enhancement. Their bones are reinforced with architect materials. Their muscles are augmented with synthetic fibers. Their nervous systems are accelerated. Each Titan has the strength of 20 unenhanced humans and can operate in environments that would kill normal soldiers instantly. The Titan picked up a massive cannon that would normally require a vehicle mount. He aimed at targets downrange and fired. The explosion was enormous. Then he simply walked through a wall of fire that the demonstration team had prepared, emerging on the other side completely unharmed. They are our front line, Rivera said with pride, our unstoppable force. When Titans deploy, enemy positions fall. But the most unsettling demonstration came from the Scion Corps. A quiet human woman stepped onto the platform. She wore simple robes with no armor or weapons visible. Scions are humans who have awakened latent mental abilities through architect neural enhancement, Rivera explained. They can do things that most species believe are impossible. The woman raised her hand. Training drones activated and rushed toward her. She did not move. The drones simply froze in midair, held by an invisible force. Then, with a gesture, she crushed them like paper, their metal hulls crumpling without anyone touching them. Telekinesis, Rivera said, but that is not all. The woman turned toward the observers. Suddenly Vrichtel heard a voice in his mind, not through his ears but directly in his thoughts. Greetings, Admiral Vrichtel. I apologize for the intrusion, but this is the most effective way to demonstrate telepathy. Vrichtel clicked in surprise. Several other observers made sounds of shock. The voice continued. We do not use this ability lightly. Reading minds without permission is considered a serious crime among humans, but in combat it allows us to coordinate perfectly, to sense enemy intentions and to break enemy morale. The voice faded from his mind. The Scion woman bowed politely. There is one more thing to show you, Rivera said, but this one is difficult to demonstrate safely. So instead, I will simply tell you about the Eternal Watch. He pulled up a holographic display. It showed what looked like streams of light moving through complex patterns. Some humans have chosen to upload their consciousness entirely into digital form. They no longer have physical bodies. They exist as pure information, able to inhabit any computer system, any network, any machine. They are our intelligence network, our cyber warfare division, and our early warning system. Thousands of them are spread across our fleet, watching, learning, protecting. They see everything, know everything that passes through our systems. One of the concordant observers, a being made of crystalline structures, spoke up. This is terrifying. You have built an army that seems unstoppable. Rivera nodded seriously. Yes, we have. And that is precisely why we spent 150 years learning discipline, honor, and restraint before we came back. Power without wisdom is just another form of evil. We had to make sure we would not become monsters in our quest to fight monsters. What stops you from conquering the galaxy? Another observer asked bluntly. Our memory, Rivera replied. We remember what it felt like to be helpless, to watch our world burn. We remember the Kreshvara saving Dr. Chen when they had no reason to. We remember that power is a responsibility, not a right. And we remember that the architects left us their technology as a test. The test is whether we deserve it. Admiral Maya Okonkwo joined them then. She had been listening from the back of the group. Our military philosophy is simple, she said. Overwhelming force combined with absolute restraint. We will destroy any threat to innocent life without hesitation, but we will show mercy to those who surrender. We will protect the weak. We will honor the brave, and we will never, ever become the thing we fought against. She looked at each of the observers in turn. In our long isolation, we studied the warriors and legends of our past. Samurai, knights, ancient military codes of honor. We built our new society on the foundation of those old ideals. Every human soldier learns not just how to fight, but when to fight. Not just how to kill, but when to spare. We are an army of legends because we chose to embody the best of what humanity ever was. Vrichtel felt his respect for these humans growing even deeper. They had power beyond measure, but they wore it lightly. They were warriors, yes, but warriors with souls. There is one more thing you should understand, Maya said. We did not build this army to rule. We built it to protect. When this war is over, When the Devourers are defeated, we will not demand control of the Concordat. We will not insist on special privileges. We will simply be one species among many, standing together in a galaxy where all can live in peace. And if other species fear you anyway? The crystalline observer asked. Maya smiled sadly. Then we will have to earn their trust the same way the Kreshivara earned ours. One act of kindness at a time. One life saved at a time. Fear fades when people see who you really are. We have patience. We waited 150 years to come home. We can wait a little longer to be accepted. That night, Vriktal sent a message to all Concordat forces. He described what he had seen. The vanguard that could not be touched. The Wraith pilots who became their ships. The Titans who were living fortresses. The Scions who moved objects with their minds. The Eternal Watch that saw everything. But he also described the human philosophy. Their honor. Their restraint. Their memory of suffering and their determination never to inflict it on others. The humans have returned, he wrote, and they have brought hope with them. Not just hope of military victory, but hope that power can be wielded wisely, hope that strength can serve justice, hope that we can win this war without losing our souls. The message spread through the Devourer Empress sat on her throne of obsidian and bone, listening to the reports with growing fury. She was ancient by the standards of most species, having ruled her empire for over 300 years. In that time, she had conquered hundreds of worlds and exterminated dozens of species. She had never known defeat until now. Explain to me again, she hissed at her military commander, how a species we destroyed 30 years ago has returned with a fleet that defeated our best battle group in less than 2 hours. The commander trembled. The Empress was known for killing messengers who brought bad news. Your Majesty, the humans appear to have accessed technology far beyond our understanding. Our intelligence suggests they found ancient artifacts, possibly from the architects themselves. The architects are a myth, the Empress snapped. Perhaps not, Your Majesty. The human capabilities match the legends, ships that move through higher dimensions, weapons that manipulate the fabric of reality, soldiers who cannot be killed by conventional means. The Empress was silent for a long moment. Then she made her decision. We will not bow to these upstart humans. They think they can intimidate us? We will show them what true power looks like. Mobilize the entire Imperial fleet, every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We will crush humanity once and for all, and then we will dissect their technology from the ruins. The commander bowed and hurried away to carry out the orders. The Empress smiled coldly. She had ruled through fear and overwhelming force for centuries. She would not change now. Admiral Maya Okonkwo received the intelligence about the Devourer, mobilization from the Eternal Watch. Digital consciousnesses had infiltrated Devourer communication, networks, and were feeding constant information back to the human fleet. They are committing everything, her intelligence officer reported. Over 20,000 ships, the entire might of the Devourer Empire, all converging on our position. Maya studied the tactical display. They think we are like them, that we can be broken by superior numbers. They do not understand what they are facing. She composed a message and sent it directly to the Devourer Empress on all frequencies. This is Admiral Maya Okonkwo of humanity to the Devourer Empress. 30 years ago you destroyed our homeworld. You killed billions of our people. You thought you had eliminated a potential rival. You were wrong. We have returned and we offer you one chance for peace. Surrender now. Stop your conquest. Join the galactic community as equals. If you do this, we will show mercy. If you do not, we will end your empire. You have 48 hours to decide. The Empress's response came within an hour. It was a video message showing her laughing. Humanity offers us mercy. You should be begging for mercy from us. We will destroy you as we destroyed Earth. And this time we will make sure none of you survive. Maya watched the message with Sarah Chen standing beside her. Sarah's face was hard, but there were tears in her eyes. She does not understand, Sarah said quietly. She thinks we are the same species that she wiped out. She does not know what we have become. Then we will teach her, Maya replied, and the lesson will be one the galaxy never forgets. The human fleet prepared for the largest battle in their history. But they were not afraid. They had spent 150 years preparing for this moment. They had built their ships, trained their soldiers, and hardened their resolve. They knew what they were fighting for. And they had one more surprise to reveal. In the deepest reaches of the pocket dimension where humanity had sheltered, they had found something the architects left behind. A construct of pure energy and consciousness dormant for billions of years. It was something the architects had used to reshape reality itself, to build worlds and civilizations. Humanity had awakened it, and more than that, they had formed a symbiosis with it. 5,000 humans had voluntarily merged their consciousness with the construct. They had become something new. Something more than human, yet still carrying human values and human hearts. They called themselves the Ascended. They did not have physical bodies anymore. They were beings of light and energy who could manipulate the laws of physics through sheer will. They could protect entire planets from destruction. They could move through space faster than any ship. They could see across vast distances and understand complex patterns that normal minds could not comprehend. They were, in essence, humanity's answer to godhood. But they remained servants, not masters. Protectors, not conquerors. The Devourer fleet arrived at the designated battlefield. 20,000 ships, the accumulated might of a conquering empire. They moved in perfect formation, confident in their numbers and their power. The human fleet met them with only 5,000 ships. The Devourers laughed. They thought the humans were fools. Then the Ascended arrived. Space itself seemed to ripple as 5,000 beings of pure light materialized across the battlefield. They were beautiful and terrifying at once, human-shaped but made of stars and energy. Their presence could be felt by every living being for light years in all directions. The Devourer fleet hesitated. For the first time they understood that they had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Maya Okonkwo gave the order. Show them what it means to face humanity. Show them mercy where possible. Show them justice where necessary. But above all, show them that genocide has consequences. The battle began. Human ships moved through dimensions, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield. Wraith pilots flew with impossible precision, destroying Devourer vessels before they could even fire. Vanguard soldiers boarded enemy ships, phasing through hulls and disabling systems from within. Titans led ground assaults on Devourer command stations with unstoppable force. But the Ascended were the most devastating. They moved through the battle like angels of judgment. When Devourer ships fired at them, the weapons simply stopped, held in place by will alone. When Devourer vessels tried to flee, the Ascended folded space around them, trapping them in place, and they spoke. Not through communicators, but directly into the minds of every Devourer in the fleet. You destroyed Earth because you could, because you enjoyed conquest and cared nothing for the lives you took. We could destroy you the same way, but we will not. We are not you. We are humanity, and we believe in justice, not revenge. Surrender now, and you will be shown mercy. Fight on, and you will be stopped. Many Devourer ships surrendered immediately. Their crews had never felt such overwhelming power. They had never faced an enemy that could speak directly into their minds, that could hold their ships frozen in space with a thought. But some fought on. The most fanatical, the most loyal to the Empress. They died quickly. The humans did not enjoy killing them, but neither did they hesitate. Those who threatened innocent life had to be stopped. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Devourer fleet was shattered. 15,000 ships had surrendered. 3,000 had been destroyed. 2,000 had fled into deep space. The Empress herself was captured by Sarah Chen, who led a vanguard team onto the Empress's flagship. They found her on her throne, surrounded by dead guards who had tried to protect her. You should have taken the mercy when it was offered, Sarah said quietly. The Empress spat at her. You think you have won? You think you can hold an empire together? You are fools. Without fear, there is only chaos. You are wrong, Sarah replied. There is cooperation. There is mutual benefit. There is civilization. You built an empire on fear and death. We will help the galaxy build something better. The Empress was brought before a tribunal, not a human tribunal, but one composed of representatives from every species the Devourers had attacked. They heard testimony from survivors. They saw evidence of atrocities, and then they passed judgment. But the judgment was not execution. Instead, the Empress and her inner circle were offered a choice. They could undergo rehabilitation, a process using advanced technology to help them understand the suffering they had caused and to rebuild their capacity for empathy, or they could be exiled to a quarantine system where they could harm no one. Even you deserve a chance at redemption, Maya told the Empress. That is what separates us from you. We believe people can change. We believe in second chances, even for those who showed no mercy themselves. The Empress chose exile. She could not accept that she had been wrong. But some of her followers chose rehabilitation, and in time a few of them would rejoin society as changed beings. The Devourer Empire collapsed. Without the Empress and her brutal leadership, the various conquered species rose up and reclaimed their freedom. Some conflicts erupted, but human peacekeepers and concordant forces worked together to minimize violence and help establish new governments. Humanity shared their technology carefully, piece by piece. They taught other species about dimensional travel, about advanced energy generation, about medical miracles, but they were careful not to share everything. Some knowledge was too dangerous, some power was too great, and they helped establish a new galactic government, the Federation of Free Worlds, based on cooperation and mutual protection. Every species had an equal voice regardless of their military,